Hello everyone, my name is Uthris, and welcome back to another episode of Planet Coaster. This is our build series, and we are brought to you by my sponsor for this video, Starbucks. We are not actually sponsored by Starbucks, though if they are willing to pony up the cash, maybe one day in our future, I'll only make Starbucks floor plans for them, because that's what we're making today. I figured if everyone's gonna have a theme park, everyone deserves to have a Starbucks in said theme park. They're already out there on every corner street and they are abundant, so I figured why not make my very own. And yeah, we're gonna go with a pretty, I guess, gridless structure here. The only thing that's going to provide grid for us, especially on this initial section, is a temporary block down there. Everything else is gonna be using these brick columns to give us our base wall, our height and everything. And that's because I want to use the glass objects that were added in the previous update. We haven't really had a good chance to test them out. And I figured making custom windows, custom doors, things like that, especially since Starbucks tend to have larger windows, it might work out in our favor. So we are building the entryway. This version of Starbucks is a corner kind of store version. So you're going to have a kind of this large central wide pillar where the entryway is going to have its access portal, and then that's going to funnel into a little bit of an L-shaped building down the way there. But basically what we're doing is just getting the first side built, because if you guys have built anything in Planet Coaster, the most efficient way to build square buildings is to build one side of that and copy it over 3 other times and just modify and stitch it together just to save some time. And right now, since we don't really have really great small metal blocks for these type of entryways, I figured using the railroad rails would be the best for this. So we're gonna have a double wide door here, and we're gonna inlay glass over it. Now, it's a bit of a minor complaint with these glass blocks, is that they're very hard to stitch together. There's always going to be a line where these two glass blocks come together and meet. That's just simply how Planet Coaster renders the edges of these things, and I basically have some complaints about that. I kind of wish they would almost not render the edge of this glass, just simply to make it easier to line up and overlap so that you don't have to find the exact glass size that you need for your window or adjust your window to fit the glass size that really they offer you. Hopefully that might be addressed later, I don't know, but we had kind of the same problems when we were trying to use the kind of adventure pack, the gems as glass, where they were overlapping. It just was rendering too thick of an object and was creating lines and things. So at the top, we're gonna have a nice awning over the doorway, which, by the way, I shrunk down the doors using our Archer for scale as per the usual with Planet Coaster. And we added a little bit of a circle up top for the logo of Starbucks. Now, I could have, I guess, in theory, carved out the logo using some art shapes and stuff, but I really didn't want to do that. It would have taken a lot of parts. I don't think it would look very good, and so we are not going to have the Starbucks logo up there. We might have the text later in the episode, but the actual person is probably not going to happen. If I were to add it in there, I would probably have to use a display. And since I'm uploading this to the workshop, and I know people don't really want to download additional assets in addition to the workshop item itself, we're not going to go through that step. But people are more than welcome to edit this and make it fit to your park. Be that change the logo, make a different logo. Could be a knockoff Starbucks, something like that. But overall, not going to use a logo. That's kind of how I'm getting across to you guys on that. The other entryways, you can see at this point, we've kind of copied all of this over to the 4 sides. And now we have to try and stitch this together a little bit, just so it makes some sense. And it's pretty quick, right? So this door becomes a window, and then we copy half of the awning over, and it becomes yet another overhang over on the right side. The left side, the double wide door was able to be maintained for the most part, but we ended up just getting rid of the door part, making it more just a double wide window. And then this back side that we're working on now is not going to have a window, mainly because I didn't want to have to worry about editing it anymore, and I figured a little bit of asymmetry would be good. A little bit more wall space is good to have for stores, and since we are doing an interior, this whole process is a little slow. So when you do interiors in Planet Coaster, you really have to think ahead. There's a couple methods to doing interiors in these. In fact, I'm thinking about doing a tutorial video on how to do interiors in Planet Coaster to save you guys some headaches down the road. This, in my opinion, is probably the best way to do interiors, and that is to account for all the interior space while working on the exterior. Now, it does help a lot that we are using a little bit more of a modern building design, something very boxy without a whole lot of details besides just some base texturing. Another thing that we're going to be doing is, since we aren't using so many grid pieces, we are free to make walls very thin, and that is very key for interiors. The thicker the wall you have, the less space you have for interiors. So besides this brick kind of cornerstone marquee for the entryway, there's going to be this paneling over to the right, and this is done with windows. So you can see that we can simply flip these around 180, cover up the window on both sides, and you have a solid wall. This has been a known trick for Planet Coaster. There's a lot of people that use windows for walls. In fact, I'm pretty sure Adfo and Bear are working on a park almost entirely out of windows. It's a little crazy. If you haven't seen it, you should go check it out. I haven't checked on it in a while. It might be done by now, but I have a feeling it's not. We have a nice stone foundation going across, and this is kind of one color palette for Starbucks. There's many different variations of these buildings around the US, and this is probably something that you'd probably see a little bit more in the middle of the country or southwest of the country, I would say. Something very smooth, textured with some brick. I would say as you get closer to the East Coast, there's probably a little bit more wood paneling on the outside, kind of to reflect the kind of the natural resources around the local area. And you'll notice that these panels I left specifically spaced. One, for textures. Actually, that's really the only reason I left it spaced. I made it sound like I was smarter, probably, and more thoughtful about the whole process than I actually was. But what I'm doing in between the cracks is putting an art-shaped block colored black so that these really kind of jump out and become a stark contrast. And then these two kind of large windows, they are a little asymmetrical. One side is a bit wider than the other side, and there's 3 panes altogether. There you can see me trying to find a window to fit everything. And luckily, these are very thin pieces, so they are kind of easy to fit into your walls if you don't have something the exact size you need. Something also with these windows, they have smaller overhangs than the doors in the main section of the building. That's probably to make sure people realize that these aren't doors. Please don't walk into them. But we don't really have a wood plank that matches the same texture, so we're going to use art shapes for those. At this point, that wall's done, so we can quickly copy it and paste it over to this side, keeping the same kind of proportions. It is kind of flipped a little bit, so it is a little unique in terms of its spacing on one side versus the other. And then we're going to add this smooth trim along the roof. We're not going to do any venting or air duct work. Most of my tile set for that is still kind of in Alpine Odyssey, and I don't want to go through the whole 30-minute load process to get that map going just so I can use some air ducts. So it's going to be relatively plain on top, which is also good because I don't know where you guys are using it, and I think making the exterior, especially the back side here, where like maybe you get some supplies, alleyways, a little bit more versatile for you guys so you can fit it into your park easier. There's even a whole back room section where, if you guys want, I have a kitchen asset pack and you can put a kitchen in there and actually have supply racks and stuff. But if you don't want to do that, you can usually just leave that as a way to kind of merge this area into your park and allow a little bit of overlap space. So it's good for both of those things. At this point, we're gonna tile the floor. Again, no grid items, simply because if I used a grid item here, it wouldn't be flush enough to the ground. I wanted a very thin floor. It's also gonna have some texture using windows, surprising no one, and that is going to have just a bit of a red kind of texturing going across the middle, and then the edges will just bleed out to the walls. So that's just a little bit of flair, nothing too fancy. I didn't want to spend an exorbitant amount of parts for this area. And then we just kind of start working on the interior kind of furniture layout. Now, with Planet Coaster, we don't have good stalls for interiors. Planet Coaster, in my opinion, wasn't designed with interiors in mind. In fact, I don't even think dark rides were really designed well for Planet Coaster. So that's why those tend to be a little janky a lot of the times. And when people do them well, everyone's pretty impressed with it because they took a broken system and essentially made it work. But with interiors, we have some shelving going across, right? I made the countertop for these stalls a little bit more nice with maybe a little bit of a granite. And then over here, we flipped a chair upside down, used art shapes, and we got stools. This was the only way I could get good legs for a stool. If you guys have any ideas otherwise to get legs for a stool, let me know in the comments down below. Other than that, we're going to add blinds because, you know, your guests are going to be sitting by these large windows. You might want to give them the option to block out the sun if it's a really sunny day. And considering this is Planet Coaster, it's always a sunny day. And yeah, just frame it up a little bit, color it the same kind of Starbucks green, just so everything kind of matches. Now, granted, the cushions on those little stools probably could be a different color. And this is something cool that I wanted to do as well. In fact, I might do this a little bit in Alpine Odyssey in some of these stores, is that it's kind of more of a modern look nowadays to have exposed ductwork. And so we're doing just a little bit. A lot of these kind of restaurants that do this generally have a lot more piping going everywhere. Not only does this provide great access points to your piping, but it does kind of add a little bit of ceiling decoration without you having to do much else. I will do some woodwork though and hang that from the ceiling just to kind of cover up some of the piping, make it look a little kind of modern art like. Modern art's not my favorite thing in the world, so you'll see that I kind of keep this relatively plain and simple, just using the back side of this wooden panel for some textures to go through, which I think looks pretty good. We're also going to kind of use some of the windows as like panels, just little panels on the wall. You can hang pictures on these if you want, or really whatever, but I think it just breaks up the smooth concrete quite nicely. And then we'll cover one side with wood, give that some trim, and then you pretty much have an interior space to decorate to your heart's content. And so this is the benefit of using this build method for interiors, is that you have all this space. There's almost a one-to-one kind of space usage to exterior usage. I will say though, if you're doing like a Victorian theme or something very fancy on the exterior, doing this becomes very, very difficult. So your mileage may vary when you're doing interiors, but overall, I'm pretty happy with the way this turned out. So we're pretty much coming to the end of the speed build. I will finish up a good little chunk of this off camera. Maybe we'll add a little bit of a plaza out front and some greenery, just so it kind of fits on the ground a little bit better, and some shelving, some miscellaneous things kind of poking out here and there, and that's about it. So let's go over to real time and see how this turned out. All right, here we are. I hope you guys want some coffee. I prefer a mocha myself because I like things that taste chocolatey and good and bad for me, and this is the Starbucks coffee house that we made here in Planet Coaster. I think we succeeded and the little bit of the goal that I set out with. It's open. We're using the new glass pieces. It has a realistic footprint, in my opinion, if not maybe a little bit bigger than you might actually find. At least the Starbucks around where I live currently, they tend to be a little small on the interior. They're kind of just, really you should just order online, basically, is what I'm trying to get across to you. We got some nice patio work out here, and I did hide a path under this for now, just so I can put some benches and umbrellas, just so people can come out, maybe enjoy some coffee. We're using the back of windows even more for the sidewalk here, and just making that look nice and crisp. I didn't want to fully wrap the building in sidewalk or anything like that, because really you guys have the option to put parking here. You guys also have the option to continue the sidewalk to either way if that's something you want to do. And really, I'm thinking about putting this in Alpine Odyssey, maybe over near the hotel area. I think that would look really nice over there. If we pop inside, you can see you're kind of greeted by an entryway. Now, I haven't stocked the shelf, so excuse me, so the Starbucks is not open yet for business, but we're using some of these haunted tables and things just to get some more interesting shelf work in here. They're colored dark, and just to kind of fit the rest of the theme. And overall, look pretty good, pretty good. Back here, got plenty of seating, probably the most seating I've ever seen in a single Starbucks. Lots of benches on the wall, plenty of table space. These tables could probably be combined if you have kind of a larger group of people. But something that I've noticed in at least the ones around my area is they tend to put tables pretty close together. So it might look weird for you guys now that they're so close together, and the fact that it's a little bit wrong aesthetically in terms of the choice of chairs, but really that's the only option we have currently in Planet Coaster, and that's with DLC. I didn't want to use arc shapes for everything because they tend to be very, very chunky and blocky, and I wanted this to be a little bit more thin and a little bit more realistic. We got a nice row of lights across the top connected by cables in this suspended wooden kind of art piece in quotation marks, suspended by cables as well. We got the same stucco kind of interior as the exterior. Some blinds, just so people can shut these if they're getting blinded at the kind of bench seating they have here. We got more things to stock your kind of what am I going to say? Stock your own home, like they would have like extra coffee here, or cups, mugs, things like that, so you can buy. A little bit of a kiosk in the middle with some trash cans in quotation marks, because I didn't put a path under here. I can't put a trash can over here for reals. Would be cool to do though. And then down this way is where you actually order. We do have a Street Fox coffee, and then also a Missy Good. So we have all of our breakfast items here, from our donuts to our actual coffees. And over here are just some staff doors, and it kind of just becomes really plain. But all in all, I think this looks pretty good and clean. It's pretty basic, but I think you guys can expand upon this quite easily in your own parks. I even added some displays up here so you guys can maybe put up your own menus. As we pop out, of course, we have the Starbucks coffee using just a sign on there. And that is about it. I do want to show you guys that it is lit up at night. And this is really the main reason I wanted to see the windows in action. I wanted to see how it would handle the nighttime lighting. And I will say, I'm pretty impressed. I like it a lot. Now, granted, I am cheating a little bit. There are area lights in here, just so that I don't have to hang a whole bunch of lights, so you can kind of see them up there. But from a distance, it looks like a Starbucks. Probably should have some lights on the sign as well, though. Anyways, that's it for this episode of Planet Coaster. If you guys have anything else you want me to build for your parks or mine, let me know in the comments down below, and we'll try and tackle that every Tuesday here on the channel going forward. Do our one-off builds. If you guys want, you can sponsor the channel. You can leave a like. You can subscribe for more creative goodies such as this. Join our Discord. Follow me on Twitter at Uthris. And this outro gets longer and longer every time I do it. So I'm going to end it here. You guys have a good week.